So hello fellow Earthlings, this is Earthling 6455463728, and I wanted to go on a little human evolutionary ramble. By that I mean that I was looking at a picture, I was studying Korean for a moment, and there's some term in Korean that goes like, the blood on your head is not even dry. And I went looking for it, and basically they were saying that, when a newborn baby comes out of its mother, it might still have some blood on it. So I was looking at this lady's face, and she was Asian, and they had her baby had some blood on its body, and her eyes, were just these very fine slits of an Asian person. And I thought, wow, that's so cool. Because, some people have said, and, people might say, oh, that's racist. How do Asian people, are they able to see when their eyes can shut almost all the way and they can still see perfectly fine? And of course, the reason for that is because the actual point where the light enters their eye, enters all of our eyes, is very small. And especially in bright light, your pupils will constrict, and you really don't need to have the whole of your cornea, that white part of your eye exposed in order to see properly. So seeing that, I thought, wait a minute, that reminds me of something. And what it reminded me of was Eskimos. Apparently in the Arctic region, Eskimos have to worry about snow blindness. And basically, snow blindness is when sunlight reflects off of the snow, which is the ground basically, and it can burn your eyes. And because of that, one of the things that Eskimos have done is they use these I can't really call them spectacles, but they use these devices that have really small slits so that their corneas don't get burned. I really hope I'm using the right term when I say cornea. Of course, in another strange way, that reminded me of when I was in a commercial once, and we all had these lights shining in our eyes, and people got, I guess it's not snow blindness, I've heard it called arc eye, where basically you get a sunburn on your eye. And in that moment I thought, well, wait a minute. If Eskimos use that device to reduce the likelihood of getting sunburned, and Eskimos and many Asian people have eyes that look like that lady's in the picture, is that an evolutionary adaptation? And as it turns out, apparently it seems to be, because Nordic people, I'm going to probably talk about the wrong countries, but I'm sure there's probably a difference between Nordic and Scandinavian countries, but basically some Nordic or Scandinavian people have Asian typed eyes. So there does seem to be an idea that is an adaptation. And I thought, wow, that's kind of interesting, And I remember a story that a relative of mine was telling me about the difference in how, let's say, black hair and white hair, the difference in how they handle snow, which is that white hair, the snow just, slides right off, whereas for black hair, especially unprocessed hair, like for like black men, the snow would stick in that type of hair, and of course it might melt, and that doesn't seem like it's a good thing to have your hair full of moisture every time it snows. So, isn't that an interesting evolutionary adaptation? one might ask, okay, so why does black hair, why is it frizzy anyway? And I recall that when it comes to hair lice, especially why is black hair frizzy when all these other animals have, straight hair? And I recall that apparently head lice and other parasites find it difficult to maneuver through frizzy hair as opposed to straight hair. So in Africa, where people are originally from, it would have been a benefit to have hair that deterred parasites, lice, ticks, whatever, from living in one's hair. And I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. Of course, we make vitamin D from our skin, exposure to ultraviolet light, and the higher that you go in latitude, the less sun is available. So one's skin has to lighten in order to be able to absorb ultraviolet light and be able to make vitamin D. So that would be a reason why people skin lightened as they went north. And I saw a band, like around the world. If you look around the world and you look around the regions where indigenous people live, people who have been living in a particular area for generation upon generation, wherever in the world that you cross the equator, there seems to be the people with darker skin, whether that is Africa, whether it's Asia, whether it's South America. I think that that's where, as based on the images that I saw, that those people there had the darker skin. So it isn't even that, being dark or black is just about Africa. It's about whatever latitude you happen to be living at, in wherever in the world, that affects how dark you're going to be. Then I was thinking that, isn't it so interesting that in Africa, the tallest people in the world, which I think are the Zulu people, and the shortest people in the world, which I think are the Bushmen in another close part in Africa, an area close to them, they both live in Africa. And when it comes to genetic diversity as the birthplace of human beings, Africa has the highest genetic diversity. So anything that is genetically determined, you're more likely to find it in Africa than any other place in the world. And as somebody pointed out recently in some, it comes down to this. A Caucasian person or a white person is more closely related to an Asian person, potentially, than any two random black people that you compare in Africa. So in a way, there's all the people in Africa, and then there's everybody else. That's one way that you can break down the system. Of course, as more information is coming out, it seems that people didn't just leave Africa and that was the end of it. Apparently, people left Africa and came back into Africa from northern regions. So as a result of that, it seems that something that was reported could have been about 5 years ago is when I was watching this science channel, and they were saying that everybody outside of Africa, outside of sub-Saharan Africa, had at least 2% or a maximum 4% of Neanderthal DNA in them. But because of what I just said, as in people actually left Africa and came back, it means that when they took a harder look at the DNA of sub-Saharan people, they found indications of Neanderthal ancestry in there as well. That said, if we go back to the idea that most of the genetic diversity is in Africa, what we get from that is, let's say if intelligence and I'm just throwing that out there. Let's say if intelligence is a genetically determined trait, then that means that it's likely that the dumbest person in the world probably lives in Africa, just like the shortest person, the Bushmen, live in Africa, as well as the smartest person in the world, genetically speaking, person with the most potential for intelligence, genetically speaking, probably also lives in Africa. And I suppose for black people, that's really a good thing, because everybody in sub-Saharan Africa, everybody who's black, are all lumped together in this blackness. But like we've said, Chinese people and white people are closer together from an evolutionary point of view than people in Africa. So while in modern times we've just dumped everybody together who is black and said, okay, they're black, it's not quite like that. If we really want to get down to genetic distance level, people in Africa are divided, probably, if you wanted to make that distinction, into many different races. I mean, from one point of view, East Africans are often really different from West Africans. There's a significant difference in terms of like Somali people and Ethiopian people. They seem to have a diverse look to them. I think many of them might be on the smaller end, whereas West African people might be a lot taller and bigger in size. But then it comes down to the whole thing that, and it's really kind of sad that we still put people into this black mix, meaning that here it is that it's 2020 and we can't really make the differences between people who might be very different. And one thing in terms of South Africans seem to also have Asian type eyes. And the reason for that seems to be that you can encounter snow blindness in, I think it has to do with dry and colder regions, maybe cold dry. And it does get a bit cold in South Africa during the Northern Hemisphere's summer, as well as the fact that apparently the climate used to be it was different, to the point that there was a genetic benefit to having those type of Asian eyes, similar to where they might be for Eskimos and for other Asian people. Well, of course, Eskimos aren't Asian, but they have a common ancestor, I guess you would say. Anyway, I just thought all of that is interesting. I like reading about all that different stuff, and I thought I would talk about it because I think it's really cool. So you can like, you can unlike, you can comment, subscribe, you can share, and of course, if you don't want to do any of that, you can do nothing. But I wish you would do something. Peace.